Hitch again. Very much welcome. Now, Michael, Jari, and Riina, we have a few questions for you regarding the future of the universities and the collaboration within the EIT raw materials. But first, I would like to ask you, how do you see, what are the most important things that you see we will need to change after this COVID has passed away?
Okay, tough question.
Yes.
Well, I think there are a lot of changes already taking place because we've had to restructure the way that we educate people, and we are now currently with the heads of the degree programs looking at what is then the post-COVID, and most likely we will see an increase in online education, but that has already been the direction where the world is more or less moving, because we want to make education globally available, as we see that as the sort of the prime tool in order for us to advance the state of the world, to say, so to less prejudice and more collaboration globally. But that's a rather difficult question. Continuous learning is something that is developing, but it's not because of the COVID situation. So I'm not really sure if the COVID changes a lot of things, but we've already considered these before. So, but maybe Michael or Jari would have different views on this.
I can maybe make a comment. It's funny that, I think it was probably 10 years ago that, it was strongly suggested by our educational support teams and our people, boy, you might want to consider, we've got this really cool way of putting courses online and MOOCs and all these things that were all kind of, new and fantastic. And, those of us that are a little grayer, we're kind of going, what, I don't have time to make these changes. And you know what, I'm happy with the way, and my students love the way that I stand in front of the classroom and talk and all that sort of business. And it's absolutely amazing that, I watched this sort of terror take place in March and April of this year, where all of a sudden we were told, got to go online. And it was amazing to see how a lot of the more senior professors really embraced this and kind of said, hey, this isn't so bad after all. So I kind of agree that we're going to be looking at a more hybridized model going forward. I think that we've learned to use technology a little bit better, and not entirely, because we still can't unmute ourselves. But I think we're moving forward, and we're our friends in Finland, for example, are starting to use virtual reality for mineral identification labs, which is a pretty remarkable thing when it's a very tangible, very much an eyeball-brain connection thing. So, I'm looking at it very optimistically. And yes, it's kind of ugly and uncomfortable, but I think what it's done is kicked us in the pants to actually start being more forward-thinking about how we're teaching.
Yeah. Well, what has to be changed? Well, COVID induced this online, but it would have never done that if we didn't have the tools already. So it's maybe a coincidence, and I think it will be actually adopted to some extent. I must say that yesterday, for instance, we had a lecture where we could invite specialists all over to a lecture. It would not be possible if we would invite them to, let's say, join by flying and taking a hotel and spending 2 days for this. Impossible. Now it's suddenly 2 hours discussion was possible just like that. So it offers us huge possibilities. What is the real problem? This is unreal. We don't know how the students actually feel. We don't have a direct contact to them. We have to develop means to contact them. Otherwise, maybe I have to learn to use Facebook or something. I don't know, but we have to have means to get a feel of what they are doing, so that the well-being is secured and the education will continue. So that's what is missing.
Would you like to continue?
No, just maybe to add to what Jari was saying. So from the perspective of science, so we used to organize seminars for 10 or 15 people, and now the world is fully open because we're using online tools. And suddenly you can, follow up on a webinar where you have Nobel prize winners and laureates, where 3,000 people attend and can actually gain this insight from them. So from the perspective of science, this is an immense opportunity. But I agree with Jari that this sort of community feel that develops within student communities, this has been hampered by the COVID situation, and student communities have had to find new ways of organizing events, for example, in order to embrace this first year experience and develop those social networks. So that is something where we've had to find new ways of operating.
But the students do it the same way as traditionally. They are very active in meetings, so that bears some risks as well. But yeah.
Would you like to add on that, Michael?
No, I mean,
you managed to mute yourself. I won't tell anybody. We're working, we're learning.
I think of it as called the democratization of knowledge, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. That all of a sudden, everybody can have the knowledge now. Everybody has access to them. It's going to be interesting how it's going to shake up traditional university administrative structures, though. Do you pay the same amount for tuition for an online course as you do for a face-to-face? I mean, that was one of the questions in The Economist this week about Harvard. Do you pay $55,000 a year for tuition on distance learning? So the value proposition, again, changes a little bit. So we have to be clever.
Yeah, that's a real question, yeah.
But that's really an opportunity for us, for the Finnish universities, for example. So when we see a decline of number of students in, for example, universities in the United States, then that is an opportunity for us. So let's capitalize on that.
Yeah, how can we improve the innovation capacity in our higher education institutions? What kind of trends do you see on that?
I think we've heard about it in terms of the the entrepreneurial training of our students. That our students are really bright. I mean, there was a young lad that came in to the office, my office, a couple of days ago. That what he's doing is he's taking mine waste and blending it with raw recycled plastic, and producing a durable plastic that's got up to 30% mine waste contained in it. So, and this was a first-year master's student that's kind of coming up with these ideas. So I think what we need to do is to do a better job at helping them find ways and pathways. And again, EIT and their Jumpstart programming and the Academy programming is a wonderful platform to help take these young people and to sort of help grow and blossom and mentor them through the commercialization of some of these ideas.
And maybe to add to what Michael was actually already talking about in his presentation, so highlighting these digital solutions and the leap that we can actually take by employing digital tools. But to be very honest, it has been a little bit of a difficulty to get software engineers and raw material experts to work together on things when there's a lot of history of, for example, software engineers working with healthcare problems and things like this. So to get them together to develop those digital solutions is very important. I've been very happy to see this development with the Copernicus data within the EIT raw materials. I think that's an amazing direction. And it was actually one of the examples that we have on this very introductory low-level course on digital solutions for the raw materials sector. But to get people into this, to understand what are the opportunities, the solutions, and then maybe go deeper into developing programming skills or something like this. So I think that is something that needs to change in order for us to implement digital solutions fully in the raw materials sector.
Olli, I can see that you have a question.
Yeah, so there was on one of the online chat remarks, it was actually quite a provocative remark, and it has to do with this innovation capacity and an observation that universities in general, with few exceptions, they are not that good at commercializing innovation. So innovations are not going to the market from the universities. What would need to be changed? What kind of change do you guys need so that that would happen? What would you say?
I think that's a great question, and I think there's still the question of does something need to change, because obviously this collaboration with industry is very important because universities are not commercial actors. So rather the companies are the commercial actors, and that's why we have upscaling projects where we have industry leads and all this, and universities have their role to play in that. But for example, LUT, I think we have the highest number of commercialization projects funded by Business Finland within the Finnish universities when we consider the size of the university, obviously. But those have been traditionally, for example, from the energy sector, where they've had this very tight industrial collaboration, and the needs are very clear to the university. Sometimes when we have discussions with industrial counterparts, there are issues of trust. So whether to communicate the actual needs, the strategically important things. So that has to develop further. But universities, they have an academic task to fulfill, and the science is very important, and we need to promote that globally as well. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. So I wouldn't say that things are that poor, but sure, we can do better.
Yeah, I agree. There's many ways of progressing. I think we indeed do have some financing opportunities that can boost innovation also in research, and our, let's say, basically they would be our doctoral students that are involved in industrial cases, and innovation follows. There are patents launched in this together with PhD work at higher numbers. And of course, I think universities' main message is to educate, to do research and educate people. So these people then go to the society and should be able to do innovation there also. So then I go back to this entrepreneurial education and tools.
Michael, would you like to add to that?
I think the thing that scares academics, and I won't say all academics because it's a huge generalization, but it's a lot of it has to do with IP, and it depends on how innovative, to overuse that word, but how flexible your academic institutions are with IP, and how that IP is going to translate through into that commercialization process. You know, for a lot of academics, the thing that they're taking forward is their baby, and it's real hard to hand your baby over to, you know, an angel investor that's going to basically take 75% of it from you, right, or more. So we have to think about how we construct that bond between the inventor and the commercialization process, because it's a very harrowing and kind of an uncomfortable experience. And it all comes down to how that IP is managed between the university, the inventor, and the ultimate startup company, for example.
Yes, if you would only allow me to dream a little bit in this sense. So we have to understand that the Finnish universities are very strongly guided by the Ministry of Education and Culture, and there are specific performance indicators that the universities have to satisfy in order to secure their fundamental funding. And this tends to drive us towards specific processes. So if you were to give me, 50 million euros every single year without the ministry funding being necessary, then maybe we would venture onto things that are maybe a little bit more risky, a little bit more unsure, uncertain. But that fundamental funding has to be secured in order for us to be adventurous. I love innovation. I think, spin-offs and new companies, new business, that's great, and we have to allow it to grow, as Michael said. But it is difficult with the constraints that we have also within the national scheme.
Thank you very much for this. It was a very, very interesting debate. For those of you who would like to know more, you'll find more information about this on eitrawmaterials.eu. Thank you very much.